Hey guys, Krona here. So the story I want to share with y'all today is one that I've kept really close to my heart for a very long time. Because I don't want to spoil any part of the story, I'm just going to dub it the Illuminati and the Holy Remote. Now the person we ended up pranking, his name is Jake. And let's just say, Jake hasn't forgiven me to this day. And there's very, very good reason for it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Let's begin. So all of this started back in sophomore year. I think. It's been so long I can barely remember the exact date. It was two of my friends' birthday parties. They were twins, so they invited all their friends respectively. Now their names were Tanner and Carter. It was an alright party, I guess, for the most part. We mostly just laid on the couch and just played music off the stereo. Me, being the awesome, awkward type that I am, snuck off to the back table and just munched on pistachios. Don't judge me, by the way, because pistachios are fucking delicious. So as I was sitting there just munching away, I was thinking, man, what is the one thing I could do that would make us remember this night forever? Then it came to me. I was going to pull a prank, and it was going to be the greatest prank any of these people have ever seen. And then, just like clockwork, it happened. Tanner and Carter announced that people were going to be able to stay the night, and my plan was coming together beautifully. And that's when the gears started turning, and then I realized I had to find my target before anything could happen. So I scanned the room and found him. His name was Jake. Now, Jake was one of those long-haired rocker guys that was really stubborn, and it just made me want to do it even more because it was going to be one of the greatest challenges I'd ever faced in my life. And then, having my target on mind, I went to every single person I could find that was going to be staying the night and got them on board. Everyone that I talked to about the prank seemed to be on board, but most thought that I wasn't going to be able to do it due to the fact that Jake was so stubborn. But I was determined. I was going to make this work no matter what. Now, the entire point of the prank was to make Jake believe that we were actually the Illuminati and we had gotten together for a meeting. The biggest part of this prank is that I needed it to be believable. So Carter and I went into his room and used Google Translate to create Latin sayings. I practiced each line I wrote, which were all generally about the Illuminati being the only true plan. Nothing much. I don't know why I went this far, but I wanted it to be as believable and true as possible so Jake would know. Besides, what are the chances of Jake knowing Latin? So even though I put so much work into this, it kind of didn't matter because he wouldn't know what I was saying. But I needed the credibility, come on. With my plan in order, I waited for night to fall. With all the other people gone, only those staying the night were remaining. Once the sun went down and the doors locked, it was go time. The first part of the plan was to bring Jake into Carter's room along with Colin and another friend named Kyle. This would be the hardest part of the plan, convincing Jake something was wrong in the house. So the plan was underway. Carter brought Jake into his room along with Kyle and Colin, and this is when I needed to set up the next scene. So along with the other people in the living room, we brought chairs and put a circle around the room. I sat them all down and told them when their cue would be. If we convinced Jake, we would leave the room and tell everyone the line, "He knows." That was their cue to start freaking out. They wished me luck as I went into Carter's room. Now, the first 10 minutes, we just hung around the room watching YouTube videos, but I knew that we had to get going now or it was never going to happen. So I tapped Kyle's leg, igniting the beginning. On cue, Kyle fell to the ground and began spazzing out. At first, Jake was having none of it and simply told Kyle to get up and stop playing around. At this, Colin and I looked at each other and we whispered, "Shit." We then stared at Jake for a solid minute, trying to set the mood. Jake simply looked back at us and told us to stop being tools. I then sat him down and said to him, "Jake, look me in the eyes when I say this. Do we look like we're playing around?" My years in acting did not fail me, as Jake stared back for a moment and eventually replied with, "No." Working hard not to break character, I began telling Jake the story. I'll recreate it for y'all the best I can remember, but it's been a very long time. told him, Jake, the world is not what it seems. We all came here for a reason. Jake responded with, yeah, for a birthday. I replied with, no, Jake, that was a ruse. We didn't expect you to stay the night. We hoped you'd leave, hoped that our combined presence would be enough to keep it all at bay. Jake replied with, keep what at bay? I told him there's a darkness in this world, Jake. It's always trying to fight the light, and that's where we come in. I don't know how I didn't laugh as we went through this. Colin was on the ground tending to the spazzing out Kyle, while I stared Jake straight in the eyes. The entire process took about 15 minutes, I guess. I kneeled down beside Colin and said, Daemonis hominem rescurrinus ab. Now that's supposed to mean demons be gone from this fellow man. I don't know if it's actually right because it's only Google Translate, but Jake didn't know that. I touched Kyle, and his cue was to calm down. Now this visually freaked Jake out. You could see it in his eyes. He was afraid. I looked up at him and asked, Jake, do you want to see the world for what it really is? At this, Jake nodded his head. So I took him outside into the living room with Colin and Kyle. I looked at the people inside the room and said the next line. Jake knows. The scene that exploded before me was something I'd never forget in my entire life. Chairs started flying. People were screaming. Rebecca, one of the people that was part of this all, went up and slapped me. And I remember this very clearly because this was not on script, but it was so convincing. Jake stood there mortified. Now, breaking character was one of the hardest things in my life to try and not do, as Jake looked like he was near tears. But we had to keep going. This had to be the best prank ever. So we sat Jake down and we told him, are you ready to know the truth about life? He nodded his head slowly, and I began telling him all these fabricated stories that we were fighting the darkness, that we were actually the Illuminati, but not the one he thinks it is. The Illuminati, we told him, were actually God's soldiers, and we fought the demons that came to Earth. Now, this sounds ridiculous to the average listener to this, but you have to imagine yourself sitting there in a room with people staring at you dead in the eye and telling you that they were fighting demons. Now, it kind of gets a little mean from this point on because we wanted to get the point home that we meant business. So I told Jake, now that he knows, he has two choices. 1, he joins us. 2, we wipe his mind. And by wiping his mind, we were meaning kill him. And so, being in absolute shock, he told us that he would join. So we started the initiation. Now, the initiation was nothing bad. It was just reciting a few lines in the Latin that I had wrote, nothing horrible, and a few tests. So I gave Jake his first 2 tests and told him we'd save his last test for later. Now, this is important. Don't forget this. So with the tests being done, we told Jake that he had to find his spirit warrior. Now, this is where things get a little silly and where I probably guess he hates me forever now. So I told him the only way to call upon your spirit warrior is to make a cross in your chest, close your eyes, and call out the first name that comes to your head. And his first name, if I can remember correctly, was Alfonso. Now, thankfully, nobody in the room laughed, which is a miracle by itself. So I told him the only way to kill the demons is to put your spirit warrior inside an inanimate object. Now, Jake chose a remote. So we put his Holy Spirit warrior inside said remote. And that's where the Holy Remote comes from. So with his spirit warrior in hand, we all sat down and we told him of the battles to come. Now at this point, Jake was starting to freak out. He started telling us that he didn't want to be a warrior. He just wanted to go home, that he was scared, and he looked like he was near tears. So I looked at everyone in the room and I said, I'm sorry, you guys. I can't do this anymore. And I told Jake these simple lines. Dude, we're fucking with you. Jake's reaction was, it was bad. He kind of just looked at us for a second and just put his head down and then screamed that he hated every single one of us. So he ran around the room, punching us, having a good time. We were all laughing, and we felt super good. Everyone was telling me what a great prank I pulled, but then I remembered. I never gave Jake his final test. So we're all laying around having a good time, and I look up at Jake and I say, "Hey Jake, guess what?" And he said, "What, Gary?" "You never passed your final test. You failed." He looks back at me. He starts screaming, "No, no, 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 no." And I said, "Jake, please calm down. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm fucking with you still." And so he looks at me and then punches me in the mouth, and everyone starts screaming and has a good time. And that was the greatest prank I ever pulled. Throughout the entire night, we kind of just held the remote in front of him. We kneeled in front of it and called it the Holy Remote. And to this day, I still haven't talked to Jake. I think he might hate me with all of his guts, and I don't really blame him. So thank you all for listening to this story. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you like videos like these, tell me. Leave a comment, like it, whatever you want to do. Thank you all for listening, and y'all have a great day.